all the efforts being made to free the remaining hostages in Iraq. Last week, the Prime Minister told the House capital expenditure will grow until the year of the Olympics. The government's own figures show that is just not the case. Will he take this opportunity to correct what he told the House last week?
Yes. In the building of the Olympics, capital investment will rise very substantially. I can tell him that capital investment is rising from 29 billion to 37.7 billion and then to 44 billion in 2009-10, and that is to help complete the building of the Olympics. Afterwards, it will fall as a result of decisions that we made. But I can tell him the comparison is between 44 billion of investment now and even in real terms a comparison with 99-92 when he was in charge of advising at the Treasury. We are investing 44 billion. He was investing only 16.
Cameron. I'm afraid that is just not good enough. Last week, the Prime Minister made a very clear statement to this House of Commons. He said capital expenditure will grow until the year of the Olympics. Now, here are the figures. Capital expenditure this year, 2009, is 44 billion. Next year, 2010, it is 36 billion. The year 2011, it is 29 billion. And in the year of the Olympics, 2012, it is 26 billion. That is a cut of almost half, from 44 billion to 26 billion. So will the Prime Minister now apologise, correct his statement, and admit he is cutting capital expenditure?
Speaker, I was just explaining how we had brought forward capital investment to last year and to this year. Mr. Speaker, the figure in 2006-7 for capital investment was 26 billion. It has risen to 38 billion in 2008-9 and to 44 billion in 2009-10. That is so we can advance capital expenditure to deal with the downturn. The problem for the right honourable gentleman is that he wants to cut capital investment now. He wants to cut it while we are increasing it. We are increasing it to complete the building of the Olympics and other projects, whereas his party would be cutting capital investment now. He has got to face up to the fact that he is going to spend less than us in every year.
Cameron. The Prime Minister has been caught absolutely red-handed. He made a statement to the House about capital expenditure growing every year, and the fact is it is being cut. If he believed in transparency and honesty and truth in public life, he would get up at that dispatch box and say, "I'm sorry, I've got it wrong, I gave the wrong figures, here are the right ones. Now do it."
Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have explained to the House that money has been brought forward to 2008-9 and 2009-10. Instead of having expenditure of just 30 billion in 2008-9, it is 38 billion. Instead of expenditure of less in 2009-10, it's 44 billion. We took the decision to advance public expenditure to deal with the recession. Now let him come clean. He would be cutting public expenditure this year, next year, every year after. He is trying to evade his responsibility for wanting 10% cuts.
Mr. Speaker, in the answer before last, the Prime Minister talked about the year 2007-8. In the last answer, he talked about the year 2008-9. The fact is, those years have already happened. What he said at the dispatch box last week was that capital expenditure would grow between now and the Olympics. The figures are here in the budget book, page 226. Capital expenditure, 44 billion in 2009, falling to 36, then 29, and then in the year of the Olympics, 26 billion. There is no other way you can cut it. There's nowhere else he can hide. He's got to stand up, explain he got it wrong, and say that what he told the House last week was wrong. Why not do it for once?
Speaker, we brought forward spending to deal with the recession. I know he's against us bringing forward the spending, but we brought forward current and capital spending to deal with the recession. Now let me tell him that spending is 44 billion in the year 2009-10. That is the highest capital expenditure ever in our country. It compares with the recession years under the Tories, when capital spending was only 12 billion or 16 billion. We are taking the action to invest in our public services, they would cut our public services now? And why does he not admit that it will be 10% cuts in public services under the Conservatives?
David Cameron.
Let's first of all be clear about the Prime Minister's claims about Conservative policy. Even his own colleagues don't believe him. This is the report we had from last week's Cabinet. Darling pointed out that Brown's Tory cut figures did not represent the Conservative Party's policy, but were merely extrapolations. Now, it gets more interesting. Cooper, previously the Treasury Minister responsible for public spending, echoed his concerns. According to one source who was present, Brown was visibly irritated at the way he'd been undermined and brought the meeting to an early close. He says he wants to be a teacher. It sounds like he's lost control of the classroom. The Prime Minister, last week at that dispatch box, he did not talk about bringing forward capital expenditure. He said very clearly capital expenditure will grow until the year of the Olympics. Let me give him one more chance to show that that talk of transparency and truth and honesty actually means something. Find that moral compass, stand up there and tell us you got it wrong.
Mr. Speaker, I read out the figures to the House. We are spending £38 billion in that year, 2008-9, more than the Tories would ever do. We are spending £44 billion in the coming year, more than the Tories would ever do. We are spending more money on capital investment than at any time in our history.
I apologise for interrupting the Prime Minister. There is simply far too much noise. The public doesn't like it, and neither do I. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, and we